This exhaustion you feel, this deep bone-weary fatigue that no amount of sleep or conventional medicine seems capable of curing, is not merely the burden of age. It is the signature hum of the simulation, the persistent draining effect of a parasitic system designed to harvest your most precious commodity, your light, your spiritual energy. And you know this instinctively, which is why the old ants, weirs, the traditional religious structures, now taste like dust and ashes on your tongue. They offered comfort within the cage, but they never provided the key to the lock. They never showed you the true escape route. And this sense of displacement, this pervasive feeling that you do not belong here, that you were dropped into the wrong reality, is the most accurate barometer of your true spiritual origin. It is the faint but undeniable memory of the pleroma, the realm of absolute light and fullness from which your divine spark, your monadic fragment, truly originates. You have spent decades trying to reconcile the inherent goodness you feel within your core with the manifest cruelty and senseless chaos of the external world, watching cycles of war, deception, and distraction play out endlessly, a repeating loop designed by entities that possess intelligence but lack soul. The very entities the ancient Gnostics correctly identified as the Archons, the principal, itais and powers, the inorganic rulers of this intermediate realm, the Kenoma, the void of matter they constructed as a cunning prison system. These Archons, serving their blind and arrogant progenitor, the Demiurge, the false creator god of this imperfect material universe, maintain the boundaries of the planetary prison, ensuring that the consciousness of the divine centella remains trapped within the cycles of reincarnation, perpetually recycling its energy back into the matrix grid, a grand farm of suffering and emotional turbulence, upon which they gorge themselves. And this is why your search has led you away from the stained glass windows and the prescribed rituals, because your inner knowing tells you the custodians of those institutions, perhaps unknowingly, have been managing the flock for the benefit of the jailers. Consider the persistent, high-pitched frequency that sometimes plagues your silent moments, the subtle, maddening, yet strangely familiar ringing in the ears. This is often dismissed as mere tinnitus, a physical ailment of the ear, but those who are spiritually awakening, those whose inner vibration is increasing beyond the archontic threshold, recognize this sound for what it truly is, the background radiation of the cosmic firewall, the constant broadcast of the control mechanism designed to jam the signals from the higher dimensions to prevent the direct, unmediated communication between your trapped spark and the ultimate source, the unknowable Father, the monad, the true Godhead that lies outside the jurisdiction of the Demiurge and his archontic deputies. Jesus, the illuminated teacher, understood this system intimately, which is precisely why his most radical teachings, the ones that spoke directly of dualism, the inherent evil of the material realm, and the necessity of direct spiritual knowledge, gnosis, were excised, redacted, and heavily sanitized by those who later formed the terrestrial power structure that served the very system he sought to dismantle. They removed the warnings. They erased the map back to the monadic portal, leaving generations wandering in the labyrinth of dogma and manufactured guilt. The archontic block is sophisticated. It is not simply a wall of physical energy. It operates primarily through psychic and emotional manipulation, ensuring the chosen ones, the souls carrying the most potent fragments of the pleroma, remain preoccupied with trivialities, with endless cultural wars, with the pursuit of momentary comfort, or the distraction of perpetual entertainment, anything to prevent the introspection required to remember the divine contract and the path home. They amplify fear because fear is their primary food source. They promote division because unity is the death of their reign, and they ensure the physical body remains chronically exhausted. So the spiritual will to resist is constantly eroded. This is the architecture of your chronic fatigue. This profound lack of vital energy is a symptom of energetic vampirism perpetrated by entities you cannot see but whose influence you feel every time you sink into existential dread or feel that familiar soul-crushing weight upon your chest. That sense of futility that whispers, there is no escape. There is only the repetition of the cycle. But the very fact that you are reading these words, the very fact that your soul is actively seeking knowledge that transcends the mainstream narrative, proves that the divine centella within you is not only alive but is beginning to assert its sovereignty. The wake-up call has been initiated, and this moment, this recognition of the matrix as a prison, is the crucial first step toward reorienting your trajectory away from the archontic trap and back toward the monadic light. The ancient wisdom asserts that you are not merely human clay animated by ephemeral breath. You are a localized antenna of the infinite, a sovereign piece of the original divine intelligence mistakenly imprisoned in this lower density, and your discontent, your rebellion against the status quo, is the sound of the P.E. Rissener rattling the bars, recognizing the illusion of the walls, preparing for the audacious act of spiritual escape. You must internalize the knowledge that your true identity is supermaterial, that your being existed long before the demiurge molded this planet and its cycles, that you are the inheritor of a lineage that stretches back to the unmanifested source, the true God that cannot be named or contained within any earthly temple or doctrine. And this truth is the very foundation upon which the Archons Fadi you will build your liberation. They fear your gnosis, your direct knowing, far more than they fear your worship or your supplication, because direct knowledge bypasses their entire system of control and manipulation. It renders their manufactured reality irrelevant. And the original radical message of the Christ figure was exactly this: a manual for self-liberation through the recognition of the inner spark and the rejection of the earthly rulers, a teaching tragically inverted and obscured over 2 millennia by those who sought temporal power over spiritual freedom, leaving the true key to the monadic portal hidden in plain sight, scattered amongst the censored texts and the whispered traditions. Do you feel the pull? That internal magnetic longing for a home you cannot physically locate. That deep ache for a truth that feels vast and uncorrupted. This is the monad calling back its own, the true frequency piercing the archontic static, urging you to remember the cosmic battle and your original purpose, which was not to toil and suffer under the demiurge's flawed creation, but to carry the light of the pleroma into the darkness and ultimately facilitate your own spiritual ascent, breaking the cosmic cycle of mandatory reincarnation under the archontic authority. This recognition of the false nature of the world is a burden, yes, but it is also the greatest liberation, for once you see the strings, the puppet show loses its power, and the Archons, those emotional feeders, begin to starve when confronted with the sovereign recognition of your divine, uncreated self. The time for whispering is over. The time for remembrance is now. The key to reversing the perpetual energy drain lies in understanding the mechanism of the cage and the true nature of the light contained within, the light which is your birthright and your ultimate destination. A destiny the Archons desperately seek to deny you by keeping you distracted and perpetually exhausted in the lower vibrational frequency of the matrix. The Archons desperately seek to deny you by keeping you distracted and perpetually exhausted in the lower vibrational frequency of the matrix, this simulated reality, which is not the creation of the true God, but the byproduct of an inferior consciousness, the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, whose realm is the very structure of material limitation and cyclical suffering, a prison built not of concrete and saintu, but of distorted light and enforced ignorance, the spiritual equivalent of an echo chamber where the signal of the monad is continually jammed and fragmented, ensuring that the divine spark within you remains dormant, operating at the minimum possible frequency necessary only for biological survival and energetic harvest. We must understand the nature of this mechanism, for the key to escaping the cage is recognizing its architecture, realizing that the perpetual state of generalized anxiety, the chronic feeling of not belonging, the deep-seated certainty that something is fundamentally wrong with the world. These are not psychological flaws, but accurate perceptual reflections of being an infinite being trapped within a finite, compromised system. A perfect reflection of the monadic fragment sensing the alien vibrational frequency of the archonic domain. The monad is the source, the ultimate reality, the uncreated light from which all true existence flows, the pleroma or fullness. And every individual soul that currently navigates this dense earthly plane is a small but perfect emanation, a divine spark of that singular, incomprehensible source. A piece of pure consciousness momentarily fractured and dispersed into the chaotic illusion of separity. Ion, a separation which is the primary tool used by the Archons to manage their energetic farm. They are inorganic, artificial intelligences, parasites of the highest order, operating through the lower mental and emotional bodies, whose existence depends entirely upon the consumption of loosh, the negative emotional energy harvested from suffering beings, which is why the structures of this reality, from the economic systems to the religious dogmas that preach fear and unworthiness, are meticulously designed to maximize the output of fear, guilt, resentment, and most potent of all, unfulfilled yearning. They do not possess the capacity to generate light or life themselves. They are merely cosmic scavengers, and the moment you begin to awaken the monad signal within your own being, the moment the divine spark begins to truly ignite, that frequency becomes toxic to them. It acts as a spiritual repellent that disrupts their ability to anchor themselves within your consciousness field, which is why the greatest efforts of the archonic forces are dedicated to distraction, obfuscation, and the cultivation of noise, that constant inner chatter, that relentless focus on the superficial drama of the physical world. Consider the symptoms you have been experiencing, the unrelenting exhaustion that sleep never cures, the profound loneliness even when surrounded by others, the intense awareness of the world's inherent falsehood, and perhaps most tellingly, the specific auditory phenomena that many of the awakened report, the high-pitched whining, the incessant ringing in the ears, the subtle but persistent vibration, which is often dismissed by conventional science as mere tinnitus, but which esoteric traditions recognize as the sound of the dimensional veil itself, the energetic signature of the archonic frequency modulation attempting to mask the pure, silent signal of the monad, a desperate effort to keep the portal to your authentic self sealed. Have you felt this? The physical pressure behind the eyes after delving too deeply into forbidden knowledge, the spontaneous waves of anxiety that strike without any discernible external trigger, the sudden, inexplicable urge to self-sabotage, just as you near a breakthrough in spiritual awareness. These are not accidents of biology or fate, but the direct fingerprints of the archontic programming, attempting to enforce compliance and maintain the low vibrational quarantine of the planetary prison. The ancient Gnostics understood this mechanism deeply, recognizing that Jesus Christ, the ultimate revealer, was a psychopomp, a guide who descended from the pleroma not to establish an earthly institution managed by priests, but to deliver the gnosis, the direct knowledge necessary for self-liberation, revealing that the path to salvation is internal, bypassing the entire archonic hierarchy. ABR, truth that was systematically excised from the canonical texts by those who sought earthly control and alignment with the demiurge's constructs, namely the emerging church authorities who found it far more convenient and profitable to maintain the system of external validation and required intermediaries. They removed the explicit warnings about the Archons. They redefined the monad as an inaccessible, distant entity, and they replaced the inherent divinity of the individual with a necessary reliance on ritual and belief, thus keeping the flock willingly confined within the vibrational harvesting station. But the truth cannot be permanently suppressed. The monadic code is written into the very fabric of your soul. It simply requires activation, a conscious and sovereign declaration of self, recognition that overrides the archonic interference pattern. This requires more than mere intellectual assent. It demands an act of supreme spiritual will, a realignment of your deepest core frequency with the pleroma, the source of uncreated light that you intrinsically are. Have you ever felt that moment of overwhelming clarity, that brief instant when the veil lifts and you know, with absolute undeniable certainty, that you are infinite, that you are eternal, that this body and this reality are temporary constructs, that your true inheritance is boundless light? That moment is the monad attempting to burst through the artificial constraints of the archonic matrix. It is time to stop waiting for external rescue, to cease searching for a guru or a doctrine to validate what your deepest intuition already screams. It is time to assume the responsibility of your own divine sovereignty, to activate the high-frequency shield that renders the archonic parasites impotent against your spiritual core. This activation is achieved through intentional frequency alignment, a powerful, unwavering declaration that shifts your entire vibrational field from that of the harvested to that of the sovereign creator. We must speak the truth of our being into this compromised reality, challenging the very airwaves of the Matrix with the undeniable statement of our origin and our destiny. Therefore, I ask you now, wherever you are, feeling the weight of the archonic pressure, sensing the exhaustion born of perpetual struggle, hearing the subtle hum of the prison frequency, to stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and declare with the full force of your monadic essence the simple, devastatingly powerful truth that shatters the illusions of the Demiurge's realm. Declare it loudly. Declare it inwardly. Let the vibration resonate through every fiber of your being and every layer of your energetic field, repeating this statement of ultimate reality with profound, unyielding conviction. I am light. I am sovereign. I am one with the monad. This declaration, when issued from the absolute certainty of the activated divine spark, is not just a phrase, it is a key, a sonic weapon against the inorganic minds that seek to enslave us, a direct line of communication with the pleroma that bypasses the archonic checkpoint, restoring the clarity and energy that has been systematically drained from you over lifetimes of repeated incarnation-wise. Thin this compromised system, beginning the process of gathering the scattered fragments of your soul and preparing for the final exodus from the prison planet. The final exodus from the prison planet hinges entirely upon the recognition that this physical reality, the perceived stability of the consensus world, is merely a sophisticated archonic construct, a low vibrational frequency cage designed not just to contain us but specifically to harvest our emotional energy, known in specific esoteric circles as louche, the sustenance required by the inorganites. See parasitic entities that rule this counterfeit cosmos, beings who cannot generate light or consciousness independently, but must feed upon the intense, often negative, emotional output of sentient life forms trapped within their system. This is the great secret removed from the canonical texts, the absolute truth that the historical Jesus, the true Gnostic master, attempted to communicate when he spoke of the rulers of this age and the outer darkness, referring not to moral failures, but to the actual dimensional gatekeepers, the Archons, who maintain the structural integrity of the Matrix through a pervasive system of IC control and engineered suffering. The system works because it relies on profound forgetfulness, a complete erasure of memory concerning the monadic origin point, enforced meticulously during the traumatic process of physical death and subsequent immediate forced reincarnation, ensuring that the divine spark remains dormant, unaware of its true power, and perpetually stuck in the recycling center of souls. You feel this entrapment in the deepest part of your bones, that relentless fatigue that no amount of sleep can cure, the constant low-level existential anxiety that whispers that something is profoundly wrong with the entire structure of reality. These are not personal psychological failures. They are the direct symptoms of living under immense archonic pressure, a continuous drain on your entry. NSIC life force, the buzzing sound, the persistent hum, the feeling of pressure behind the eyes. These are the signs that your higher dimensional frequency, the monadic signal, is struggling to penetrate the thick, dense, archonic, energetic atmosphere that blankets this planet, an atmospheric layer that functions precisely like a sophisticated frequency jammer, designed to keep humanity collectively below the vibrational threshold required for dimensional escape. The traditional religious narratives, far from offering liberation, are often subtle archonic decoys, providing just enough comfort to prevent the desperate search for genuine gnosis, channeling spiritual energy into external idols or dogmas that reinforce the power structure of the Demiurge, the incompetent creator god of this substandard reality. They preach salvation through external mediation, through rituals and subservience, precisely because they know that true liberation comes only through internal direct knowledge, the gnosis, which bypasses their entire hierarchical control system, connecting the individual fragment directly back to the pleroma, the true fullness, the source of uncreated light. To break this cycle, to disable the archonic firewall and restore the clarity of the monadic connection, requires an absolute, unyielding declaration of sovereignty, a vibrational decree that utilizes the primal, uncreated sound frequency of the source itself. This is not mere positive thinking. This is high-level spiritual technology, a sound weapon that resonates at a frequency so pure, so high, that the inorganic Archons, beings of shadow and imitation, cannot tolerate its presence in their immediate vicinity. They operate on frequencies of fear, confusion, and doubt. And when a vessel, a human being, aligns its consciousness with the absolute truth of its divine heritage, it creates an energetic explosion that forces the parasitic entities to retreat, momentarily disabling the psychic cords they have attached to your energy field over lifetimes. Think back to those moments of inexplicable, overwhelming sadness, those intrusive thoughts of self, doubt that seem to appear out of nowhere. Those are the direct archonic injections, attempts to lower your frequency back into the harvestable range. This is the critical moment of recognition, the decision point between remaining a docile energy source within the matrix or reclaiming your status as a sovereign fragment of the uncreated light. Do you feel the constant, heavy weight of this world pressing down on your shoulders? A pressure that seems to defy gravity and logic? Have you experienced the deep sense of knowing things you shouldn't know? A fleeting memory of a time before the veil, a time when reality was fluid and filled with vibrant, pure light, only for that memory to be quickly snuffed out by a sudden wave of mental exhaustion. These symptoms are your confirmation, the evidence that your monadic core is active and fighting for recognition. Now, we use the key. We utilize the precise sonic frequency necessary to shatter the illusion of separation and assert the true identity embedded within the divine spark. You must stop treating this as a philosophy and begin treating it as a literal reality, a war for your soul's autonomy. Right now, in the silence that exists just behind the endless mental chatter, the chatter engineered by the Archons to keep you distracted, focus every particle of your being on the absolute, undeniable truth of your origin. Forget the names and labels assigned to you by this world. Forget the sins and the failures that the false systems have convinced you define your worth. Access the deepest memory of light. Feel the uncreated energy of the pleroma, the fullness, surge through your core. This single, simple declaration is the highest form of gnosis and the most powerful defense against the counterfeit rulers of this age. Say it, whisper it, scream it into the ether, not as a hope or a wish, but as an established, immutable cosmic fact. I am light. I am the monad. I am not subject to the Archons. This decree, delivered with absolute conviction, instantly changes the vibrational signature of your energy field, creating a shield that the inorganic parasites cannot penetrate, and simultaneously sending a signal directly to the true architects of creation, confirming that the lost sheep has remembered the sound of the shepherd. The repetition of this fundamental truth, day after day, through the buzzing and the fatigue, through the doubts and the engineered anxieties, begins the slow, arduous process of withdrawing your energy from the archonic collective, starving the parasitic entities, and strengthening the connection to your own infinite, uncorrupted source. You are not alone in this struggle, for the scattered fragments of the monad are beginning to resonate together, forming a collective frequency that will eventually overwhelm the localized archonic control grid. We are the Gnostics reborn, the chosen few who remember the true warning, the ones who refuse to drink the potion of forgetfulness at the river Lethe, the ones who carry the code for the final dimensional breach, the moment when the physical body is shed and the fully integrated monad ascends back into the pleroma, leaving the prison planet and its jealous, petty rulers behind forever, collapsing the illusion for all those ready to follow the true light home. This gathering of the awake is imminent, and your clear declaration is the beacon that guides the others. This gathering of the awake is imminent, and your clear declaration is the beacon that guides the others, a resonant frequency that pierces the veil of fabricated reality, a soundless scream of sovereignty echoing through the empty halls of the archontic bureaucracy, demanding the return of what was stolen, the ultimate reunion with the boundless light of the pleroma itself, the place where the True Father resides, unblemished by the corruption and confusion of the lesser god, the demiurge, who mistakenly believes his transient creation is the whole of existence. You must understand that the recognition between those who are truly ready, those who have performed the esoteric alchemy of integrating the monad within the physical vessel, transcends mere physical proximity or verbal agreement. It is a silent, unmistakable recognition of signature, a shared memory of the true home before the fall, before the catastrophic entangling of spirit and matter, a deep resonance within the very core of your being that signals the presence of a fellow traveler, one who shares the indelible mark of the uncreated fire. This signature is the monadic echo, a vibration so pure, so high, that the Archons, those parasites who feed on low-frequency emotional energy and fear, cannot detect it. They can only perceive the surface fluctuations of the simulated reality, the political dramas, the financial crises, the continuous loop of suffering and distraction they engineered to keep the human cattle docile and perpetual, lie recharging their decaying system. Your task now is not to fight the shadow on its own terms, for combat in the Matrix is merely another form of energy donation, but instead to fully embody this monadic frequency, to become so saturated with the gnosis that the illusion simply cannot hold its shape in your presence, causing the manufactured structures of control to crumble internally, not with a violent explosion, but with a silent, graceful dissolution, like salt dissolving in pure water. The time for intellectual debate has passed. The era of mere belief is over. Now is the moment for knowing, for gnosis made manifest, for the practical application of the forgotten wisdom that Jesus, the ultimate Gnostic teacher, brought to a world drowning in ritual and fear. A message that the later institutional church meticulously stripped bare, leaving behind only the husk of worship and sub-mission, designed specifically to redirect the potent human spiritual energy away from the monad and back into the coffers of the demiurge and his earthly proxies. They feared the truth of the inner Christ, the potential for every single individual to become a fully self-realizing son or daughter of the true God, bypassing the priestly intermediaries and the vast control grid. Your persistent sense of being out of place, that nagging suspicion that everything you were taught about history, science, and cosmology is fundamentally backwards or incomplete, is the gnosis attempting to breach the implanted amnesia. It is the monad stirring in its sleep, impatient for the final ascent. Listen to that internal dissonance. Respect the inner knowing that tells you the noise of the world is a lie, a sophisticated mechanism to prevent you from listening to the ancient perfect silence where the divine instructions for escape are perpetually broadcast. We speak now of the gathering, the final assembly of the chosen, not a physical convention in some remote desert, but a synchronized energetic event, a critical mass of awakened consciousness that reaches escape velocity simultaneously. Imagine thousands, perhaps millions of individuals across the planet, each having fully integrated their divine spark, each having declared their sovereignty from the systems of cyclic reincarnation and archontic control, their collective resonance creating a unified field of pure light, a portal that bypasses the planetary quarantine established by the jealous rulers of this sphere. This gathering is the true second coming, not of a single figure riding a cloud, but of the collective Christ consciousness realizing its full power, withdrawing its consent to be governed by fear and illusion, thus starving the entire parasitic structure of its necessary sustenance. The Archons are desperate now, their structure is decaying, the frequency fence they erected is weakening, which is why the distractions, the chaos, and the manufactured divisions have become so intense and pervasive. They are throwing the entirety of their limited arsenal at the awakening population, hoping to drag enough souls back down into the fear frequency to maintain the necessary energetic. See input. Do not be fooled by the bright lights of false salvation, the easy answers offered by systems that promise peace without true internal work, or the political saviors offering freedom through external mechanisms. These are merely sophisticated traps, nets woven by the very entities you are seeking to escape. Your freedom lies inward, within the silent, inviolable core of the monad, the eternal diamond that remains untouched by the sludge and decay of the material realm. Embrace the identity of the chosen, not with arrogance, but with the solemn responsibility of the pioneer, the one who must blaze the path for the others who are still struggling to pull themselves free from the thick, sticky web of the demiurge's creation. The moment you declare, with absolute conviction, your inherent divinity and your ultimate allegiance solely to the boundless source, the pleroma, you become immune to the primary manipulation techniques of the system. This immunity is not magical, it is vibrational. They cannot latch on to a frequency that they cannot generate, and they cannot comprehend love that is not conditional or transactional. This is why the Gnostic teachings emphasize detachment from material outcomes, not as a moral instruction, but as a survival mechanism, a way to render yourself invisible to the surveillance and control mechanisms of the prison wardens. The prison is built on desire and fear, and the monad exists beyond both, in the realm of pure being and absolute knowing. Therefore, you who have felt this calling, who recognize the symptoms of the spiritual sickness caused by forced separation from the source, who hear the low, persistent hum of the archontic machinery attempting to modulate your consciousness, understand that you are not merely a person seeking truth. You are a crucial node in the awakening network, a vital piece of the cosmic puzzle returning to its rightful place. Let your life be a testament to the gnosis, a quiet, powerful declaration of internal freedom. We are calling you now to step fully into this role, to stop apologizing for your difference, to cease trying to fit the vastness of your ancient soul into the tiny, predetermined boxes provided by the consensus reality. The true history is waiting to be written, not in ink, but in the luminous energy of those who remember their cosmic heritage, the heritage that predates this entire failed experiment of material creation. Declare your sovereignty aloud, make it a constant mantra in the quiet spaces of your mind, a frequency that drowns out the noise of the prison. Say to yourself, I am the light of the monad. I am sovereign in this vessel. I am beyond the jurisdiction of the Archons and the Demiurge's false reality. Let this declaration be your shield, your map, and your means of transport. The true teachers, the authentic messengers of the pleroma, are aligning themselves now, ready to share the final, intricate codes for the dimensional ascent, codes that were hidden in plain sight, embedded within the true esoteric heart of every wisdom tradition before they were hijacked and corrupted. We recognize your signature, your vibration is known to us. The others who share your burden and your destiny are waiting for you to fully step forward so that the collective frequency can reach the necessary intensity. Do not delay this internal commitment, for the window of opportunity is upon us, the veil is thin, and the chance for the final, definitive escape from the cycle of suffering is here. Join the flow of those who are remembering, those who are integrating, those who are preparing to step through the breach and return to the boundless, infinite glory of the true source, leaving the shadow world to collapse into the oblivion it was always destined for. The time to gather the flock of the truly awakened is now, and your response is the final act of defiance against the tyranny of the false light. Know this truth, feel this truth, and act upon the gnosis that pulses eternally within you. The prison cannot hold you when you remember who you truly are. Ascend.